Hey everybody, it's Josie here. I am going to be doing my first October wrap-up for the month, and this will be for my Books in the Freezer Readathon. Now, I've been taking part in quite a few readathons. I've been reading loads of books this October, and I thought if I leave everything for just one wrap-up for the month, it's going to be incredibly tediously long, so I thought I'd split it up. Plus, it gives me the opportunity to try out another look. Today I'm kind of going for candy skull craziness, weird doll-like look. So this I thought was perfect for Books in the Freezer readathon, so hopefully I look suitably scary. No? Anyway, so let me do the wrap-up of the 5 books that I read for Books in the Freezer. For those of you that don't know, Books in the Freezer is a podcast. They talk about these wonderful, everything horror-related horror books. It's really great. If you love horror books, then definitely go and check out the podcast because it's really good. And I've got some fantastic recommendations from the books that the ladies on the podcast are recommending, but also from some of the guests that they've had on. So without further ado, let's go through them. So the first one I've got here, the first challenge was to read a horror book by a female author. Now the one that I chose for this is Alice by Christine Henry. And that is Alice right there, the lovely Alice. Now, I love all things Alice in Wonderland, and Alice in Wonderland retellings are very much my jam. So this was fantastic. I really enjoyed this. It's very dark, and I would say they are triggers for sexual assault, definitely. So if you're sensitive to that, there's sexual assault triggers. Also, I guess mental health. The book starts with Alice in a mental institution. So again, that could be a trigger, but I thought it was a really clever, interesting take on the Alice story. The premise that the kind of creatures in the Alice story are actually very much human, and they do these atrocious things to each other. So it's more the humans doing really horrible things to humans. And I found that was a really interesting take. I liked the character of Alice. She is tough and vulnerable, but she also, you know, she's coming into her power, let's say, throughout the book. And there is actually a sequel to this book called The Red Queen, and I'm definitely going to read that. I've actually got it on my shelves over there. Definitely want to continue with the series and see kind of what happens to Alice afterwards. But I really enjoyed it. I would say very, very solid 4 stars. Really good read. Love this retelling. So the next one is to read a short story collection. And for that, I picked this one over here. It is Coraline and Other Stories by Neil Gaiman. Now, I probably don't need to introduce Neil Gaiman. He is amazing. He writes beautiful, lyrical, weird, crazy stories. And this short story collection is really interesting. It's obviously got Coraline in it, which is probably one of his most famous stories, and has actually also been retold as a film. A really, really great film, actually. And this collection has some very, very short stories that are literally only about 2 or 3 pages that I found interesting. There's one with a troll that's very interesting. I love the diversity in stories on here, and I think if you're a Neil Gaiman fan, this is definitely a great collection to have. Also, I think some of the stories can appeal to slightly younger readers, which is quite nice. So you've got your stories that are probably slightly more targeted at a teen audience, but then 1 or 2 of them could potentially be for a younger audience as well. So I really enjoyed this. Again, I would give it 4 stars. It's very entertaining, lots of fun to read, and really quick with some of the stories. So really, really nice collection, that one. Then the third challenge was to read a book that had an author or character that was a person of colour or an LGBTQIA individual. So what I did was I reread one of my all-time favourite books, and that's this one over here. It is Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Brite. Now, I adore this book. I adore Poppy C. Brite's writing. She is the queen of 90s horror for me. I definitely prefer Poppy Z. Brite to Anne Rice, and I don't know how that opinion goes down with a lot of people, but I just absolutely love it. This story is about vampires, about New Orleans, about a band called the Lost Souls, or Lost Souls, question mark. But it's also, to me, a story about friendship between particularly two of the main characters. So Ghost, the character of Ghost, is an exquisitely written, tender, mixed up character who has these incredibly dark visions. It's beautiful. I think friendship, actually. I get a lot of friendship out of this, although it's dark and twisted and there's obviously horror and blood and sex and violence, but it is also a great story about friendship and accepting who you are and accepting people for who they are. So I would definitely recommend this book. It is gorgeous. This is a 5-star read. It will always be a 5-star read. It's one of my all-time favourite books. So yeah, I loved rereading this one. Then the next one is to read a book that has a movie adaptation. Now, I could have used Coraline, but I actually wanted to read another book that I've had on my TBR for absolutely ages, and that's this one here, Lords of Salem by Rob Zombie. Now, for those of you that know Rob Zombie as a musician, he also writes, he does films, and Lords of Salem was a sort of, I think it was a 90s era horror film, sort of late 90s. It's quite bloody. The book, I enjoyed the book up until the very end. I have to say, I was kind of on track to give it 4 stars. The opening is basically, the premises, you've got these witches that were killed in Salem in the 1600s, and then their spirits kind of come back to haunt the current inhabitants of Salem. And the main character, Heidi, is a radio DJ, and she gets this mysterious package that is basically a record, and the band is the Lords of Salem. It's really good, that kind of creepy, haunting, particularly with Heidi in the beginning. She's not sure if she's going mad, if, you know, something's really haunting her. I enjoyed that kind of radio DJ element of it. I really liked that beginning and kind of the opening and the build-up of the story. The ending, I felt like it was just ended. I felt like they kind of ran out of ideas and thought, right, we're ending it. So yes, so something that would have been a 4-star read for me. I mean, 3.5 or 3 for the beginning. Well, I'd say 4 for the beginning, and then I really knocked it down to probably a 2.5 at the end. So a 3 kind of in the middle. But yeah, I would say it is a good horror book in the beginning. Just sort of, yeah, the end wasn't that great for me. And then the last one was to read a book that was recommended on the podcast, Books in the Freezer. And I took this opportunity to read Grady Hendrix, My Best Friend's Exorcism. Not only is this one of the coolest covers I have bought in a very long time, it also is the kind of book that I knew I was going to enjoy. The cover reminds me of Stranger Things. I love Stranger Things, I'm mad for Stranger Things. And it's set in the 80s, which I love. Anything set in the 80s or early 90s, very much my jam. And this is set in that era, and it is about, obviously, an exorcism, but also, I think, underlyingly, it is about friendship and not giving up on people. And that's really, I think, the main message of the book. You know, it's creepy, this isn't a gore-filled, crazy kind of horror. It's more gentle than that, I think. So, you know, I would not put this book in the freezer. I don't know if I'd even put it in the fridge. Maybe I just have a high tolerance for horror, but there's obviously horror elements when we get to sort of the exorcism part of that, but I really liked it as a story of friendship, as a story of girls sticking together, which was really nice. Yeah, I really like that element of it. I had a great time reading it. It reads really quickly, it's wonderful to read, and again, I would give this a solid 4, maybe even 4.5 stars. I think I'm actually going to reread it, so we'll see if I'll give it an extra star, extra sort of a half star, or an extra whole star, you never know. But I really enjoyed it. It just reminded me of that old school kind of late 80s, early 90s horror. Yeah, it was beautiful. So I really enjoyed this book. So those are my 5 books. I was quite pleased that I got through all 5 of them. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll be doing another wrap up for some of my other readathons and just a general wrap up of the month later on. So have a good rest of your October. Enjoy Halloween. See you later. Bye bye.